Houston Real Estate Radio.
Thanks for tuning in to AM 700 KSEV in the Houston area to learn more about real estate here on Houston Real Estate Radio. I'm your host, Shannon Register, and when you have a real estate question, give us a call, 281-882-8088. You can call us anytime and leave us your real estate question, and we will find the answer and get back with you the next week if we don't know it, but we know most of them. If we don't, we bring on a guest who does. You can always find out more about our guest and the things that we discuss here on the radio at rrea.com/radio. And today I'm excited to have with me a fabulous guest, Chuck Jacobus. He is a distinguished real estate attorney, and we're so excited to have him on to talk about an area that a lot of consumers don't know about, and I've even found that there are some realtors out there who don't know about it either. So definitely something we want to talk about is lease to own or rent to own, because I find that there's a lot of consumers out there who want to do this and don't really know much about it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here. So tell us first of all, what is lease to own and rent to own are the same thing?
Sure.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means that the potential purchaser can occupy the property and pay rent with an agreement to ultimately buy the property within a year or 2 years, or when he gets his credit fixed up or whatever he thinks is going to happen in the future to enable him to buy that home, usually at a predetermined price.
Okay. Do you recommend this?
No.
All right. Well, tell us your angle on it, because I still have realtors who call me and say, hey, Shannon, is that seller willing to do, or is that landlord willing to do a lease to own? This is a house that my client really likes, and they want a lease to own it. And it amazes me, because I'll even ask them, what forms are you going to do that on? You know, how are you going to do that? What attorney are you going to send them to? You know, and they haven't even thought about that. So tell us about it.
Well, first of all, there are no forms for it.
Right.
For a good reason. The Broker-Lawyer Committee is not going to prepare any forms for this. We have a series of statutes that was passed in 2001, that says a lease to own or a contract to purchase property that is coupled with a lease for longer than 180 days is a contract for deed, an executory contract to purchase. If it is an executory contract to purchase, there are 10 pages of statutes that deal with this new relationship. People don't understand that once you have a lease to own, if that's what you think you want to call it, you now have a landlord and tenant relationship. Now you go to Section 92 of the Property Code. There's a whole new area of laws there that people really aren't aware of. Then you go over to the executory contract series of statutes, which is 5.061 of the Property Code, and the compliance requirements under both of these provisions are so onerous that we don't want to encourage lessees or brokers to get into this posture. Mm-hmm. There are way too many laws involved. The penalties are so severe, the remedies are so severe, that I don't frankly know a lawyer who will even draw documents like this anymore. Because if I drafted them, something went haywire, malpractice would be the next call. And I just don't want to put myself in that posture of putting parties into an agreement here that they don't really know the ramifications of.
What do you think is a better solution? Because to me, the better solution is to do seller financing. That way, you're going ahead and selling the property. You've agreed to everything's done. It's closed, and then you just make your payments to the seller. They're just giving you the financing. Do you think that is the better option?
Seller financing is a very good option. We're seeing a lot of seller financing today. First of all, you can get maybe a little bit higher price on the house. You don't have to worry about your appraisals. You don't have to worry about your financing contingencies. And you can occupy the house earlier. The only problems with seller financing is you can do it without a problem if it is your homestead, if it's your primary principal residence. Mm-hmm. We have an exemption for up to 5 sales if it's investment property. Mm-hmm. Anything beyond that, you probably have to have a loan originator's license in order to make a seller-financed property.
Does the seller have to own the property outright? Or, I mean, can he have a lien on the property, or does he have to own it outright to be able to do seller financing?
Most of the time, he has to own it outright because chances are 99% that his underlying mortgage says he can't sell the property or they'll call the note due.
Yeah. So as a realtor, I'll have other realtors call and say, hey, this person wants to buy it, but they can't get financing. Will your seller do seller financing? And if my seller is put in that position, I tell them not to take less than 20% down. What do you think?
Sure. And a lot of it depends on who the buyer is. I mean, the seller,
how bad the credit is,
sure,
what the issues are.
The seller can do his own evaluation for whether or not he wants to do that. Sometimes you have sellers with motivation that they'd rather have the monthly income for the next 5 years,
right?
Than the lump sum payment.
And sometimes it can be a benefit for them as far as taxes go, depending on what their situation is.
It depends. Yeah, it could. The sale of your primary principal residence really isn't a taxable event unless you have in excess of $500,000 in profit. But we do see a lot of that. There are a lot of homes that have a $500,000 profit at the end of the day.
Right. So lease to own or rent to own, you don't recommend it. And there are no promulgated realtor forms to do it on. So realtors cannot do it. And so if people want to do it, just steer them away from it and tell them there are other options. And the other options basically are either seller financing or wait until you can afford a loan, rent until you can, or until you can qualify for the loan, rent until you can qualify for the loan, and then purchase the property.
Sure. Sometimes you just have to counsel a purchaser. It's better not to buy right now. If your credit's bad, if you've got some other issues, you've got something in your past that keeps you from being approved for a loan, maybe that's because you're just not ready for a loan. Maybe you shouldn't be buying a house right now.
It's just so hard with interest rates so low. Everybody wants to buy. I mean, everyone wants to take advantage of that. But you're right, sometimes there are people that shouldn't take advantage of it, even though it's a great opportunity.
Well, I had a client that bought a condominium in Nevada, Las Vegas. He just couldn't stand it. And it was no doc financing, it was no down payment. Everything was just wonderful. And now he's trying to sell it for $3,000, and he can't get $3,000 for it.
Oh,
so
no.
It's easy financing sometimes is not your best option.
Right, that is true. With the seller financing, on the buy side, what do you recommend to buyers? What should they look out for? If they're going to be doing seller financing, what would you recommend to a buyer?
Well, you have to look for a competitive interest rate. The good news is you don't have any points to pay. There's no appraisal fee, all that sort of thing. So that part of it makes it very attractive. You can get in sometimes for a very low down payment, maybe none. If you have a seller that's willing to provide that kind of financing for you. But you have to understand you're buying financing here, more than just a house.
Right.
And you may be paying a little bit more than the market will bear. And if you lose your job in a year or 2 years, or your spouse loses their job, now you guys are looking at real trouble. And this is what has caused some of the housing crashes.
Tell us about that. What happens when you have seller financing in place? What happens when the buyer can no longer pay their loan? I mean, they don't have a mortgage company coming after them. What happens to them?
Well, they don't have a mortgage company coming after them. They have the seller coming after them. And the seller can sue you. The seller can foreclose on it. They can pursue a deficiency just like a lender can. So the remedy, if you can't make your payments, is really no different if you have seller financing versus traditional lender financing.
Okay. All right. So again, just to wrap up, on lease to own or rent to own, you said that you don't recommend it. Tell us the problem. Wrap up the problem. Just give us like a quick summary. What's the big issue with rent to own? If we want to just quickly tell someone this is not a good idea, why?
It changes the relationship of parties to a landlord and tenant relationship. It becomes an executory contract if the lease is for longer than 180 days, and there are two different statutes that you have to comply with lots of seller disclosure issues and lots of remedies issues that most buyers and sellers just don't understand. The penalties under these statutes are so severe that most lawyers I know won't even prepare these documents anymore. It's just not worth it. We had a $5,000 lot that was sold this way. The Court of Appeals upheld a $655,000 judgment on a $5,000 lot.
Wow.
Because there's liquidated damage penalties in these things, and they can be real tough. The Supreme Court reversed that case, by the way, on a very minor technicality, but that's the kind of exposure you're looking for in things like this, and most realtors don't even know these statutes exist, and heaven knows most buyers and sellers don't know these statutes exist.
Right. Well, thanks for tuning in for another edition of Houston's newest talk radio show, Houston Real Estate Radio, here on AM 700. We appreciate you coming on today with us to talk about owner financing, seller financing and owner financing, and lease to own or rent to own. Appreciate you being here.
Great, glad to be here.
Walking down the sidewalk, kicking my feet as I'm moving to the music. Step to the beat, I woke up today, canceled all my plans, and I stepped right outside with my guitar in my hands, and the note